The rich white family started screaming the second the hidden security footage appeared on the courtroom screen. One woman nearly collapsed beside the jury box while reporters rushed forward so aggressively that police officers had to hold them back. The judge slammed his hammer again and again, shouting for order. But nobody inside the courtroom was even listening anymore. Because on the giant courtroom screen, America was watching billionaire William Carrington abandon his own daughter inside a burning mansion while 26-year-old black janitor Marcus Reed ran into the flames to save her. Gasps exploded across the courtroom. Marcus sat frozen at the defense table, barely breathing. Just 12 hours earlier, prosecutors called him a violent criminal who tried to murder one of Texas's richest families by setting their mansion on fire. News channels destroyed his name before the trial even started. Politicians demanded life in prison. Social media flooded with racist comments calling Marcus dangerous, unstable, and proof that people like him should never be trusted around wealthy neighborhoods. But now everything was changing. The hidden security footage showed 80-year-old Sophie Carrington trapped upstairs behind smoke and flames while terrified servants screamed for help. William Carrington could clearly be seen running outside with his wife and security team while panic spread across the property. And then the footage captured Marcus, still wearing his janitor uniform, still running directly into the fire while everyone else escaped. The courtroom fell completely silent except for the sound of flames crackling through the speakers. Marcus remembered every second of that night. The smell of smoke, the screams, the heat burning through his lungs. He had worked for the Carrington family for almost 4 years, cleaning floors, fixing pipes, carrying heavy furniture, and staying invisible while rich people walked past him like he didn't exist. Most days nobody even looked him in the eyes. William Carrington especially treated him like furniture. "Don't touch anything expensive," William once warned him during a party. "One mistake could cost more than your entire life's savings." The guests laughed. Marcus stayed silent because he needed the paycheck. His mother's medical bills were destroying him financially, and jobs were hard to find for black men in the wealthy side of Houston unless they accepted humiliation quietly. So Marcus swallowed every insult while polishing floors inside a mansion bigger than entire apartment buildings. But the Carrington family never realized Marcus noticed everything. He noticed how William screamed at staff members over tiny mistakes, how servants disappeared suddenly after asking for raises, how Sophie, William's daughter, spent most evenings alone with nannies because her parents cared more about parties and business dinners than spending time with her. And most importantly, Marcus noticed the mansion's electrical system was dangerously outdated. He warned management 3 separate times. Nobody listened, because to them, he was just the janitor. Then came the night everything burned. The Carrington mansion was hosting one of the richest political fundraisers in Texas. Luxury cars lined the property for nearly a mile while celebrities, politicians, and billionaires filled the ballroom drinking champagne under giant crystal chandeliers. Marcus spent hours cleaning spills while guests stepped around him without even acknowledging his existence. Around midnight the storm started. Heavy rain slammed against the mansion windows while thunder shook the property. Guests continued partying upstairs, completely unaware that sparks had already begun spreading inside the basement electrical walls. Marcus smelled the smoke first. At first he thought something minor overheated in the kitchen, but seconds later the lights flickered violently throughout the mansion. Then came the explosion. Boom! Screams erupted instantly. One entire hallway burst into flames as power systems failed across the mansion. Smoke spread rapidly through the upper floors while terrified guests rushed toward exits, pushing each other in panic. Marcus heard Sophie screaming upstairs. Nobody else moved. William Carrington grabbed his wife and ran outside immediately with security surrounding them. Politicians shoved servants aside, trying to save themselves first. Rich guests trampled over broken glass and furniture while smoke swallowed the staircase. Marcus looked toward the second floor and heard Sophie scream again. For one split second, fear froze him completely. The flames were spreading too fast. Then one terrified maid grabbed Marcus's arm, crying hysterically, "She's still up there!" Marcus didn't think any more after that. He ran straight into the fire. Back inside the courtroom, reporters stared at the giant screen in complete disbelief while footage showed Marcus disappearing into smoke as pieces of the ceiling collapsed around him. The jury looked emotionally shaken already. One woman in the audience quietly whispered, "Oh my God." The video continued. Marcus could be seen kicking open Sophie's bedroom door while flames crawled across the walls behind him. The little girl cried uncontrollably near the window while smoke filled the room. "It's okay," Marcus shouted in the footage. "I got you." He wrapped Sophie in blankets and carried her through the burning hallway while debris crashed around them. At one point, part of the ceiling collapsed, barely inches behind his body. Then the screen suddenly showed something that changed the entire courtroom atmosphere instantly. William Carrington, outside the mansion, holding back security guards from going inside. William yelled in panic. The West Wing vault is still locked. The courtroom became dead silent. Marcus slowly looked toward William across the room, because he remembered that moment perfectly too. Even while Sophie remained trapped inside the fire, William cared more about the hidden vault containing cash, jewelry, and confidential business files. Several jurors stared at William with visible disgust. Now, reporters typed furiously on laptops. The prosecutor looked completely unprepared for this footage. Then another shocking clip appeared. Moments after Marcus escaped the mansion carrying Sophie safely outside, police officers tackled him onto the ground beside the burning property while William pointed at him screaming, "That man started the fire!" Marcus still remembered lying face down in wet grass while handcuffs snapped around his wrists. He kept yelling about the electrical explosion, but nobody listened. Officers saw a black man covered in smoke standing near a burning mansion owned by a billionaire white family. That was enough for them. The media destroyed him overnight. News stations cropped photos to make him appear aggressive. Online blogs dug up old juvenile arrests from his teenage years. Comment sections celebrated his arrest before investigators even completed reports. Meanwhile, William Carrington stood in front of cameras calling Marcus a disturbed employee. But now the truth was playing publicly on a courtroom screen for the entire country to see. Marcus noticed Sophie sitting beside her mother near the front row. The little girl slowly stood up. Her voice trembled softly across the silent courtroom. "He saved me." Every head turned toward her. Tears filled Sophie's eyes as she pointed directly at Marcus. "Everybody left me upstairs," she whispered. "But he came back for me." William instantly looked terrified. His wife started crying quietly beside him. And for the first time since the trial began, Marcus Reed no longer looked like the criminal in the room. The silence inside the courtroom felt heavier than the walls themselves. Nobody moved after Sophie Carrington's words echoed across the room. Even the reporters stopped typing for a second. The little girl stood there trembling beside her mother while tears rolled down her cheeks. "He saved me," she repeated softly. Marcus lowered his eyes for a moment, trying to control the emotions building inside his chest. After everything they said about him online, after the hateful comments, the death threats, the news stations calling him a monster, hearing Sophie speak those 3 words felt unreal. William Carrington suddenly stood up so fast his chair slammed backward onto the floor. "She's confused," he snapped nervously. "She's traumatized," but nobody looked convinced anymore. The jury kept staring at the courtroom screen where the footage remained frozen on Marcus, carrying Sophie through smoke and flames like a scene from a movie. Burn marks covered his arms. Pieces of ceiling crashed behind him. He could have died in that mansion. And still, the first thing police did was arrest him. Judge Eleanor Whitmore narrowed her eyes at William. "Sit down, Mr. Carrington." William slowly sat, but panic had already taken over his face. Sweat rolled down his forehead while reporters whispered aggressively around the room. One journalist near the front already had a breaking news headline prepared on her laptop. "Black janitor framed after saving billionaire's daughter." Marcus's lawyer, Denise Harper, finally stood after remaining quiet most of the morning. She walked slowly toward the giant screen while adjusting her glasses. "For 2 days," she said calmly, "my client was publicly described as violent, unstable, and dangerous. Major news networks repeated accusations before evidence was fully examined." "Why?" She turned toward the jury. "Because it was easier to blame a poor black employee than admit the truth." William clenched his jaw tightly. Denise pointed toward the frozen image of the burning mansion. "Marcus Reed warned staff multiple times about faulty wiring inside that property. We have maintenance reports proving it." A nervous murmur spread across the courtroom. Then Denise revealed another document. Signed maintenance request. Ignored electrical warnings. Photos of damaged wiring taken weeks before the fire. The prosecutor immediately stood up. "Objection. Overruled." The judge interrupted sharply. Denise continued walking slowly across the courtroom. The Carrington family spent millions on parties, imported marble floors, luxury art, and private security. But according to employee records, they repeatedly delayed critical repairs because the West Wing renovation budget had already exceeded expectations. William looked furious now. But Denise wasn't finished. And when the mansion finally caught fire, she continued. Mr. Carrington realized something very important, remained trapped inside. She pressed another button. The courtroom screen switched to new footage taken from outdoor security cameras. It showed William screaming near the burning mansion while firefighters tried organizing rescue efforts. At first it looked chaotic. Then the audio became clearer. "The vault," William shouted desperately. "Forget the upstairs rooms. Open the vault." Gasps spread instantly across the room. One juror actually shook his head in disbelief. Marcus stared at William silently. He remembered that exact moment vividly. While smoke swallowed the mansion and Sophie screamed upstairs, William kept yelling about the hidden vault located beneath his private office. Not his daughter, not the trapped workers. Duval, Denise looked directly at the jury. The prosecution wants you to believe Marcus Reed started this fire intentionally. But why would a man risk his own life running into flames to save a child if his goal was murder? Nobody answered. Because there was no answer. William suddenly pointed angrily toward Marcus. Givers after my vault. The courtroom erupted again. Judge Whitmore slammed her hammer loudly. Order! William's voice cracked with desperation now. He knew about the money. He knew where the documents were kept. Marcus finally spoke for the first time since entering court. I knew because you bragged about it every night. The room went silent again. Marcus slowly stood up from the defense table. His voice remained calm, but years of pain sat behind every word. You treated workers like we were invisible, he said while looking directly at William. You talked about secret business deals in front of us because you never thought people like us mattered enough to listen. William's face darkened. Marcus continued. I cleaned your office for 4 years. I watched politicians come into that mansion smiling for cameras, then say disgusting things the second door is closed. His jaw tightened. I heard how you talked about black neighborhoods, about immigrants, about poor families. Several reporters immediately focused cameras closer. Marcus looked toward the jury. Now, you know what the crazy part is? He asked quietly. I still saved his daughter. William looked away. Because deep down, even he knew Marcus was telling the truth. Sophie suddenly left her seat beside her mother and walked slowly across the courtroom before anybody could stop her. The little girl approached Marcus carefully while everyone watched in complete silence. Then she hugged him. The emotional impact hit the room instantly. Several people in the audience began crying quietly. Even one police officer near the wall looked uncomfortable after remembering how violently Marcus was arrested. Sophie's small voice trembled against Marcus's chest. You came back from me. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. Of course I did. William's wife, Carolyn Carrington, finally broke down completely. She buried her face into her hands while crying uncontrollably, because she remembered something nobody else knew. The night of the fire, Marcus had actually warned her personally about electrical problems 2 weeks earlier. But William dismissed him immediately. He's a janitor, not an engineer, William said that day. Now, the mansion was gone, and the entire country was watching his lies collapse in real time. Outside the courthouse, crowds gathered around giant news screens broadcasting the trial live. Protesters demanding Marcus's release grew larger every hour. Social media exploded with outrage as clips of the security footage spread online. Some people looked furious. Others looked ashamed. Because millions realized how quickly they believed the worst about Marcus without evidence. Back inside court, Denise Harper requested permission for one final witness. Judge Whitmore nodded. Cole Daniel Reyes, a middle-aged firefighter, walked into the courtroom wearing full department uniform. His expression looked serious as he took the witness stand. Denise approached carefully. Mr. Reyes, were you present the night of the fire? Yes. Did you personally witness Marcus Reed's actions? I did. The courtroom listened closely. Daniel took a deep breath before speaking. When we arrived, the mansion was already collapsing from the inside. Flames had spread through the Upper East Wing faster than normal because of electrical failures inside the walls. He paused. Most people were running away from the structure. Denise nodded. And Marcus Reed. Daniel looked directly toward the jury. He ran into it. Silence again. Daniel continued. Honestly, I thought the kid was suicidal. No firefighter on scene even wanted to enter yet because the roof stability was failing. He swallowed hard, but Marcus didn't hesitate. Marcus remembered that moment perfectly. The smoke burned his lungs instantly when he entered the hallway. Heat tore through the ceiling while alarms screamed around him. Every instinct told him to turn around. But Sophie was still upstairs. Daniel's voice softened slightly. When Marcus finally came out carrying that little girl, he shook his head slowly. I've worked fires for 23 years. I've seen people abandon strangers. I've seen parents abandon neighbors. But I never saw a man risk his life for a family that treated him the way they did. William looked completely destroyed now, because everybody understood exactly what Daniel meant. Marcus had every reason to walk away from that mansion. Every reason to leave those rich people behind. But he didn't. And that truth hit harder than anything else in the courtroom. Then Daniel reached into his jacket pocket carefully. There's one more thing, he said quietly. He pulled out a small, melted object sealed inside evidence plastic, a burned silver necklace. Marcus froze instantly. It belonged to his mother. The same necklace he always wore beneath his shirt. Daniel held it carefully. We found this near the upstairs hallway where the roof collapsed. His voice lowered. Marcus lost consciousness protecting Sophie from falling debris. He almost died shielding her body with his own. The courtroom became completely silent. Marcus remembered the impact now. The collapsing ceiling. The unbearable pain. Sophie screaming his name. Then darkness. Daniel looked toward the jury one final time. That man sitting over there is not the villain in this story. He pointed toward Marcus. She's the reason that little girl is still alive today. And for the first time since this nightmare began, the entire courtroom knew exactly who the real hero was.